Are you stretching or strength training? Do you even know the difference? Don't feel bad, most professionals don't either. Without knowing the difference, you could be wasting valuable time with traditional stretching, and worse yet, you could be making your pain worse than it needs to be. Today I'll explain the difference between stretching and strength training and how you can be sure to never make that mistake again. Welcome back to the Muscle Repair Shop. My name is Butch Phelps. I'm a functional massage therapist, certified health coach, and an expert in aging sciences. And today we're going to talk about the difference between stretching and strength training. We tend to put the two together because of athletic events we've been a part of in our past, or our gym class. We tend to stretch a little tiny bit either before or after we played a game or we worked out. And even in the gyms, our trainers will go work out and then they'll have us to stretch a little bit. So the idea is that the two really go together. One of the things that I say to my clients all the time is think of it like the gas and oil in your car. The gasoline relates more to the strength training, which gives you the power to be able to run, whereas the oil is a little more like the stretching, which gives you better lubrication and less friction for the car to be able to move. Now, both things do two different things in the automobile, but if you leave one out, the car will stop, correct? So like with gasoline, if you stop strength training, it doesn't take you very long before you start to feel weaker than you did before, and that happens pretty quickly. Without the stretching though, you don't have the lubrication. And like a car, you can start a car without the oil in the engine, and it may run for a little bit of time, but eventually it's going to seize up and stop. Well, so will your body. And so when you think of stretching and strength training, while they tend to be linked together, they're two very different mindsets in doing each of those. In fact, for most of my clients, I say to them, think more of stretching in terms of eating. No matter how much you eat today, and no matter how good the food is today, tomorrow you'll wake up and you'll be hungry. But you don't necessarily go to a doctor and worry about something's wrong because you're hungry, right? Well, stretching works the same way. No matter how much you stretch today, tomorrow you'll probably wake up a little stiff, especially in the beginning, because every thought that you have and every movement that you have affects the muscles of the human body. Your stretching is more emotional, as the muscles are more emotional, than it is physical. When we think of stretching, we think of pulling that taffy, right? The idea is that you show the brain that it can relax, because once you get into a stretch pose, for instance, you're putting the body in a little bit of resistance. If you put too much resistance there, the brain will contract the muscle for fear you'll hurt yourself. That's why you can't do a split right off the bat, all right? But the thing is that if you give yourself just a little bit of resistance for about 5 seconds, breathe out and let the muscle relax, the brain can see that it's safe and will allow you to do that. Over time, what you'll find is that your body will become more flexible and more pliable all the time. So let's start out with the differences between stretching and strength training, and then we're going to combine the two and talk about how to know the difference in what you're doing. In strength training, what's happening there is that you are pushing through your brain's resistance. So in other words, when you're lifting weights, for instance, let's say you're lifting 20 pounds, you can move up 5 pounds to 25 pounds, and while you may feel a little more difficult to you, chances are in a set of 10, you'll get at least a 7 or 8 before you may stop the first time you do that. However, if you were to jump that up from 20 pounds to 40 pounds, you may find that you may not do more than 2 or 3 repetitions before you just have to stop. What happened there? The brain immediately felt the increase in weight, the maximum increase in weight, And the brain then felt like you could hurt yourself, and what it did was stop you from doing that. In an incremental rise of, let's say, 5 pounds from 20 to 25 pounds, while the brain had to be tested a little bit and you had to put forth a little willpower to get yourself through it, the brain did realize quickly that you were not going to hurt yourself in that situation, and then allowed you to start doing that. And now that, of course, allows the muscles to grow stronger, it allows the bones to become stronger, and as you continue to progress over time, you would get to that 40-pound weight if that was your goal. Same thing in repetitions, same thing in cardio. Cardio, you start out, nobody starts out running 26 miles their first day. They start running out maybe a half a mile their first day or a quarter of a mile their first day. And over time, as they build themselves up and the brain sees that it's capable of doing that, you can get to the 26 miles. Well, now stretching is a little different mindset. Instead of pushing yourself through like you would in cardio or strength training, in stretching, what you're doing is learning how to release the tension in your body, both emotional and physical. Okay, so again, strength training, you're pushing through, and many times you can listen to music that will inspire you or talk to whatever you're doing, but you can push the mind through and get there. When it comes to stretching, though, you have to really sink your mind in with your body, because you got to release emotional tensions along with the physical tensions that you will feel. If you try to push through too fast and think you're going to force your body to do it, the brain, out of fear of tearing a muscle, will stop you in your tracks, and that'll be the end of that. So when we look at the two and putting those two together, we start to see that it's two very different things, but two very different mindsets. The problem is that in today's world, too many times people who either have learned stretching through their gym class in school, or they've gone to the therapists or trainers, we tend to be teaching traditional stretching like we did 40, 50 years ago, where if we push and push and push and push, we think we're going to cause our bodies to stretch out. In fact, I remember watching a movie, I think it was called Bloodsport, and it was in martial arts, and Jean-Claude Van Damme, in one of the scenes, they had his legs tied where they were spread into a spread between two trees, and his leader just sort of let him stay there for a while to force his body to do that. Let me tell you, that's a dangerous thing to do. You're more likely to have an injury than to become more flexible to do that. And so I would not suggest that, but that's kind of the view people get when they think about stretching. So let's look at a couple of things here that I see most common for people who are trying to, let's say, help with their back pain, or they're trying to stretch out their calves. Will be the second one that I'll show you, where they make critical mistakes and they're literally doing strength training versus stretching. Now, the first one that we're going to do is lay on your back, and you'll have your knees up pointing towards the ceiling, feet are flat on the floor, and you'll do hip raises where you'll lift your hips up off the bed. Many times people look at that, in fact, they've been told by professionals that this will stretch out the back. Number one, in most cases, the back pain that they're feeling has very little to do with the back. It has more to do with the muscles on the front of their leg, but that's in another video. We'll talk about that some other time. And number two, they're literally having to tighten the front of their hips, they're tightening their abdominal muscles, and they're tightening the hip muscles to actually lift their hip up off the table. And as you can see, as I lift my hips up off the table, you can start to see me having to tighten those muscles to do that. So if the front of my thighs are causing my back pain and my tight hips are causing my back pain, this particular move could literally cause my back pain to get worse or to linger longer. That's a huge mistake. And yet every day when people come in to talk to me about back pain and I ask them what they do each time, that's usually the number one thing I see every single day that's been given to them by professionals who have been trained to do that by other professionals who are educating these people how to do their job. I was taught the same thing, so I totally get it and I totally understand it. Huge problem. The other one I like to see is, and I just had a client in the other day was talking about a friend of his showed him how to do that, and that was to sit on the floor with one leg straight out in front of you, and you just bend over and reach down and grab your toes, or if you can't, reach as far as you can. Now the idea here is that by doing that you will stretch out your hamstrings and maybe your calves, but for most people they don't really think about it's the calves that you're stretching as well. And the flaw here is that as you're leaning forward, you're really doing more work with the abdominal muscles because you're having to contract your abdominal muscles to try to reach down to your toes. And even if you can reach your toes, most people will just put their hands around their foot and they love to show you that they can put their nose onto their knees. But the point is that what they're really stretching is those small muscles in their low back, maybe a little bit in the middle hamstring, but that's basically a strength training move because they're tightening their abs to hold them down. What's the resistance? Well, the resistance is the hamstrings in the back of the leg, the rotating muscles in the hips are tight, and as they're trying to lean forward, they're actually tightening their abs to fight against the muscles in their hamstrings and the muscles in their hips. Well, if those are tight to begin with, and you put that pressure on them, chances are they're going to continue to be tight. And in one of my other videos, I talked about that before you can release the hamstrings, and there's 3 muscles there, okay? Most people don't even really know that. You have to release the 4 calf muscles, and that's right, there's 4 calf muscles there, not just 1, before you can release those hamstrings. And so what people are doing when they do that is literally tightening their abs. It's a great ab workout, but it's not a strength training workout. And that's the key, is understanding, am I strength training or am I stretching? As in the first one I showed you with lifting your hips up off the table, the resistance is you're lifting the weight of your pelvis, the weight of your midsection of your body with your legs and hips. And in the second one, you're pulling against the hamstrings and the rotating muscles in your hips to strengthen your abdominal muscles. And yet these are 2 very common stretching moves that I see people given for back pain. So anyway, if you've enjoyed this and it's been helpful to you, please share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe down below, ring the bell so that every weekend you'll get a new video. And for now, see ya.